So, but meanwhile, then we will change the order. We expected to start with Gary, but we will start, no problem. We will start with Mariska.
Yes, of course.
Mariska, do you have, you have in 5-7 minutes, tops, your statement about the centralized clinical trials. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Montse, for having me. I've been in the industry for more than 20 years in clinical research, and what we definitely see is a new trend in decentralized clinical trials. So the traditional way is really that the patient goes to the site for every single assessment of the clinical trial. And when you have a hybrid model, you will have a combination. You know, patient will go to the site for certain things that are not able to do at home, for example, difficult scans, or depending on how the IP administration is. And then we have a fully decentralized or so-called virtual trials. And we see definitely, also due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that has been catalyzing the trend towards much more decentralization of clinical trials. There are a lot of advantages, because if you look at the patient, it's less burden for travel, it's less disruption of the daily life. And also a good thing is that it broadens the access of additional patients. Because, for example, I just attended the World Orphan Drug Conference last week, and especially in an indication where you only have a very limited number of patients living all around the world, decentralized clinical trials are really the way to go to make sure that you can bring treatments to those patients. So based upon all your new technology and digital innovation, we have been able to already create a toolkit for decentralized clinical trials. So to give some examples, you will have an e-consent, you will have home nursing to take some of the assessments, you can do data collection through wearables, through apps on the telephone, you could ship even the medication to home, you can organize lab samples to be collected. So it's a lot of advantages for the patient. And it's also good to make sure that you increase your patient recruitment. You will increase as well patient retention, which is key in clinical research. And I think overall this is the way to go, right? There are of course some challenges that I also would like to highlight. First of all, regulatory. We need to do, from a regulatory perspective, we need still a little bit of guidance and development to make sure that all the data that is collected through virtual assessments is validated in the correct way, is approved by the regulatory authorities. So I know that there's a lot of work putting into that. Another point I wanted to highlight is, for example, the primary endpoint in a study. If, for example, you have a certain neurological assessment, a lot of those tests are done in person. But then suddenly you need to do that virtual. You know, how do you assess facial expression in neurology patients through a computer? So it's the continuously evaluation of new products, new digital innovation for clinical research is helping the patient journey, the physician journey, and also for the client, because in the end your trial will be more efficient, it will cost less, and you will go faster with the treatment to the market.
Okay, that's
how many minutes was that?
Yeah, actually, it's less than the time expected, so it's fine. I mean, we will just catch up later. Yes. So probably we can also say hi to Gary. Gary, he is the data director in Eatris, and actually Eatris has a project also, or activity in EUPEL also involving clinical trials platform, so they also have a lot to do on that regard, and they are working the data also on that area, I understand. But the question we wanted to ask you, so is this digitalization and the personal medicine or personalized medicine expectations that we have, what can you tell us about that? And if you want to refer to Mariska's words as well, feel free. Go ahead, please. We cannot hear you, Gary. Okay.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yep, good.
On to the panel this morning. My name is Gary Saunders and I am the Data Director at Eatris, the European Research Infrastructure for Translational Medicine. And our focus on data is a relatively new direction. We're involved in a number of data-related initiatives and projects, for example, the Eatris Plus and EU Pearl that have been mentioned today. And to explain what Eatris is, we are an intergovernmental organisation with 14 EU countries and members and representation across the organisation from more than 115 European institutes. And what's of interest there is that more than half of our institutes are clinically focused, and these are a mix of university hospitals, clinically orientated research institutes and or classic hospitals. And the area of AI in translational medicine and its potential impact is a key driver of our scientific strategy, and it really is a pleasure to be here today to talk about this topic. From our perspective, the potential of AI to revolutionise healthcare is actually really quite exciting. However, there are a number of factors that we must consider in order to make best use of the recent and predicted technological advances in this space. And I would like to structure my contribution here around three key areas. The first is on data quality, the second is on data reproducibility in a federated landscape, and the third is on the application of coordinated AI to the healthcare system across Europe. So first, the availability and access to high quality data is a key topic of focus for Eatris. For AI algorithms, the availability of clean and well-structured data is of utmost importance. In the healthcare domain, this is hugely problematic as there are a number of obstacles one must overcome. And I'd like to put these obstacles in four rather large buckets. Firstly, in the healthcare domain, we're often looking at a variety of different data types, like was referenced by the previous speaker and by the first presentation today. And many AI algorithms demand these multimodal data sets. However, clean integration of multimodal data is a huge challenge. And as we look across the European landscape and the variety of data types that are available, this challenge is eminently clear due to the lack of standardisation in data generation and or data management, including across the vendors that generate much of the data in the space. Secondly is the rather large challenge of data access. So as we are now mostly working in a federated landscape with recent regulations such as GDPR in place, data access across jurisdictional boundaries is a huge challenge. Thirdly, I suggest that data interoperability is a massive issue. This is different to my earlier challenge of data integration. When I think about data interoperability, it is looking at languages, both vocabularies and technical languages, and e.g. the availability of truly technical interoperable service pipelines that can be delivered to the healthcare systems across the federated landscape. And then finally, I bring the challenge of capacity in the healthcare system to utilise AI advancements. Together, the four of these are huge challenges, but I'd like to also argue that they're not insurmountable. From Eatris, our strategy of promoting strong and coordinating data management practices underpinned by common international data standards helps to address many of these. I now want to turn to the challenge of data reproducibility in the federated landscape. I think the first thing to reference here is that the healthcare systems are now a major data generator across Europe. Many local, regional and national initiatives are there to promote coordination and standardisation, but there's a challenge to try and coordinate this on a European and even a global stage. And in this vein of thinking, it's important to consider that investment at the local level is in many cases higher than that from the European or global levels from, say, the EU Commission. Eatris' perspective on how to best coordinate the landscape is again to focus on the implementation of data standards. For example, those that come from the Genomics for Alliance and Health, the OMOP standards for metadata management, the SNOMED standards for the description of phenotypes. AI algorithms need that clean and high quality data in order to be effectively applied and importantly reproducible. And I'd like to look at an example, for instance, biomarker validation. There are many AI algorithms right now out there that are used to identify biomarkers for disease. However, one of the major bottlenecks in the field is in biomarker validation, which is needed to confirm findings in a different cohort. The challenge of biomarker validation in a different cohort can be massively helped by the implementation and coordination at an international level the use of data management standards so that these data are available and standardized for the application of AI in different settings. I'd now like to turn to the questions that were posed directly to me for this morning's sessions, and I'll take the three of these in turn. The first was how AI will impact healthcare. So my answer to this is that, well, whilst it's a really key question and under a lot of debate right now, I think, to be perfectly honest, the true answer is that no one right now knows how AI will impact healthcare. The potential is there, and the field is moving in a promising direction. However, I hope that I've sufficiently explained that AI technology on its own will not revolutionise the field. It's the application of the technology to clean and standardise data, and that's something I think we're quite far away from, that will enable the advancements in this area. So for us at Eatris, the focus on how to better promote strong data management and coordinated data management on an international scale is really where we see the potential for rapid and successful improvements in the area. The second question is AI technology driver enough to transform healthcare system? I alluded to this in my previous answer, but for me the answer is honestly no. Incentives are needed in order to utilise AI in the healthcare field to its maximum potential. There needs to be policy drivers and also clear legislation. And if we look at the example of GDPR, I would argue let's find best ways to ensure that legislation is not a blocker to innovation, instead it's empowering innovation. We need to identify, support, broadcast and drive the wider adoption of good practices in the area of data management. So therefore the technology on its own cannot do this. And in order to achieve our aims, we need strong programmes of funding, opportunities at the local, national and international levels in order for us to be coordinated, ensure that the technological advances as they come are there to be implemented. And then again, from the Eatris perspective, that is where we do our work in coordinating across the European landscape in the area of translational medicine, working with the policymakers, funders and governance to coordinate across Europe. And the final question I was asked is the outcome here a more personalised medicine? My short answer to that would be that personalised medicine is not only the outcome, but it is the desired solution as we look at the current landscape. In recent years, we've made magnificent strides forward in understanding biology via basic research. For example, the omics technology splash, the improved physician practices and data collection and the use of longitudinal data in the clinic. And absolutely the application of multimodal data types to improve patient care and outcomes. I think right now we're at the beginnings of a long road to best apply new and groundbreaking AI technologies to advance the application and innovation that has been driven forward in recent years. And I really hope that in addressing some of the points that I've made here about strong coordinated data management, underpinned by the application of global common standards, driven by a marketplace that offers incentives towards these aims, that truly AI will be a revolution in the practice of personalised medicine field. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Gary, because you answered the first and the second part of the of your participation, so it's great, and you left a little. We will open the questions to the people, the attendees in the room. So probably some more will come later. But thank you for this complete answer. And now we will ask more or less the same to César. But you mentioned policymakers. You mentioned interoperability of data, and from his perspective, prior responsibilities in the public healthcare system somehow, connected to Aquas, and now from the perspective of the industry. Which is your answer to those questions and the one that you already prepared, I know?
Thank you very much, Montse, and thank you everyone to be connected from home or here presentially. For me, it's an honor to be here, and I just wanted to start with a question to the public. Montse, if you allow me, how many of you are patients right now? Can you raise your hand if you are patients? And can you raise your hand if you will be a patient in the future? Are you planning to be a patient in the future somehow? Yeah? Okay, that's good. So it's clear that within the healthcare ecosystem, an ecosystem is defined as a complex system within systems, or many systems working together. You have a role as patients, as citizens, but you have more roles than that if you're here listening to those leaders. And something that I really like about these kind of meetings is that you meet people who are able to connect the dots. So I think that's what we try to do here. I was taking my notes because I was joining dots also, and it's a always learning process. So for me, what I thought in order to bring you some value is now that we know many of the challenges, I was thinking maybe I can bring 6 opportunities into the table so you can discuss that over the day, which I tried to put together, joining the dots of previous speeches and also from the experience of the public sector in Catalonia, which is one of the strongest public sectors regarding data and innovation in Europe right now, and also from industry or the biomedical company perspective. And I brought, first of all, data, the data-driven transformation and the why. I will explain that later. The GDPR and legislation regulation opportunities that I think Mariska was commenting upon, and a concrete example on that. Then from the solution to the need assessment, and we will discuss why we shouldn't be solution-based, but need assessment-based. Then population health and value-based healthcare, and finally talent. So first of all, for data, what I would say is that we really need to take into account that AI and data, they are not the solution by itself. They are drivers and enablers for solution making. So don't stick to data and AI as the final objective, but try to look for the need. And I think Mariska was bringing us a really nice example on that, and this is the example I would bring, decentralized clinical trials. We have bioregion in Catalonia, which is central in terms of clinical trials. If we want to be even better than we are, we need to put value into the needs of the patients that are, or volunteers that are following clinical care for clinical trials. And decentralized clinical trials regarding the collection of data, the interpretation of this data, those are opportunities for consolidating processes that we need to improve. So often we say like information systems are a strategy by itself, and they are, but information systems are the consolidation of an improvement on processes in mostly every other industry. So let's focus on what we need to improve, and let's use information systems to improve that. Then I wanted to bring the example of legislation, and GDPR tells us that the owner of data is you as patients or citizens, and sometimes we forget about that. So we really need to give feedback and value to the healthcare system, to the patients, to the citizens itself, in order to let them use this data with a proper secondary use. So if we give this secondary use for purposes that are not directed to the value that we give to citizens, it will be much more difficult than if we put citizens on the center. So GDPR might be somehow a limitation, but it's the huge opportunity that we have right now to put patients on the center of the decision making that we do with data, and that's something that we are doing. Then I wanted to talk about the solution need, and it has to be with the first one. And I saw in the data that was presented by Angela, IBM, I mean, how can it be that 25% are really supporting this decision-based? Like they want healthcare professionals to help designing the solution, but they don't want them to design or to find the unmet need. Like, are we so sure that the solutions that we are designing are fit with what the healthcare system needs? So I would just go back a bit on this, and as Angela was saying, we need to focus also on the definition of the needs of the healthcare system in order to have the other things done. I mean, it's impossible to scale something that has been designed with medical doctors, with patients, if it's not addressing a real need of the healthcare system. That's not going to happen. And for that, I have an example, which is the 1,000 Spanish-speaking apps for diabetes that we have. We have almost 1,000 apps for diabetes in Spanish language that are, of course, a nonsense. If you talk to a patient who is living with diabetes, they will also have some other pathologies. They would also be mothers. They would also have whatever other disease that they have, and they don't want to have like 3 apps or 4 different apps on the iPhone or on the phone every time that they feel sick or they need follow-up. Almost ending the conclusions, the population health. There are some systems all over the world who are not just paying for volume, number of hospitalizations, number of patients treated, but mostly they are paying for patients who are controlling a disease. So they do collaborations with the industry, with the biomedical companies, in order to have a certain amount of patients, for example, cardiovascular disease patients, who are controlled and who won't have a secondary event, for example. And this is something that needs data. This needs platforms registering data in order to be able to pay per value and to do value-based healthcare systems, population-based. For that, we need data and we need data analytics, and that's going to be a major enabler of this transformation of the healthcare system. And as a conclusion, I would say, in all those pillars with providers, healthcare system, and the EU that Angela was going through, they were talking about talent and they were talking about ecosystems, also about funding, use cases, but mostly talent and innovation ecosystems. And the example I wanted to bring is how Eatris, Biocat, and Barcelona Tech are bringing this ecosystem and how you can really use this ecosystem to join the dots and be of value to the healthcare system.
Well, César, you actually made my work, so it's great. You can continue. It's perfect because you just connected all our dots, and I think it's what we needed to do in this table. But before also giving the floor to Angela to also to wrap up or to give some messages, additional messages to the ones she already gave, I want to connect something that César just mentioned to your presentation, Angela. And I was also really catched by this side of the interests. And this is and I want to ask you, this was a survey, if I am not wrong, performed between December 19th and January 20th. So this was because before all that happened after those surveys were performed. So probably the answers would be different, but I also was catched by seeing that testing was first, that meeting needs, for example. I saw talent somewhere there, very at the far end. So please, what is your reaction to this, or can you update us a little bit on that? And also, if you can comment on some of the 6, actually I wrote 6, dots that César was mentioning in his speech. Thank you. Angela.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me better now?
Much better. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So yes, talent is definitely critical, and what we have seen in the years, in COVID years recently, has been an even more focus on getting the right talent. There is not enough talent in the market. Both companies and the public sector are struggling from that, and that's not just in healthcare. So that definitely is a big issue we need to address, and we need to do so at scale. But I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. At the same time, we need to make the industry even more attractive for that talent who has a lot of options to come into healthcare as opposed to going into another industry. Some people would naturally do that because they love healthcare and they believe in its mission. Others will look at it as an industry versus another industry. So how can we make it more attractive for them? And I think that's where getting the right collaborations that enable the AI solutions to scale and creating the centers of excellence that allow the talent to work in teams that are multidisciplinary and can have impact on larger scale, I think these things are important. Because otherwise, it becomes an option of joining a system that has a lot of little pilots that might be interesting, potentially super impactful, but not necessarily at the scale that they would need to have impact on a population. And if that is the case, and the people model is different and the compensation is different, then for some people this might not be as attractive. So we need to fix both. We need to find, attract, and retain the right talent, but also ensure that the solutions can scale and continue being improved. Clearly, there's a lot of improvement that needs to happen, but doing so at the same time to make it more attractive.
Well, that's, I think she addressed the right things there. So thank you, Angela. And I also want to re-ask Mariska, because some mentions were also made to the decentralized clinical trials. I want also you to comment on something that was written in July 2021. this is an MIT technology review. Hundreds of AI tools have been built to catch up COVID. None of them helped. So this is a strong assessment or sentence. So can you also comment on that, and also some of the questions that César raised regarding the decentralized clinical trials?
Yes, of course. So I think what was very interesting also, César, is that you mentioned that we will have a lot of tools, we have a lot of processes and new systems, but we also need to make sure that everything is going to be connected and analyzed by the data management and statistical team. In the end, that is so crucial. So we're talking about, for example, when I look at my work at the CRO, when I receive a request for proposal from a biotech or a pharmaceutical company, I will need to reach out to 10 more vendors to make sure that they are aligned, and make sure that the protocol is done in the best possible way. Because from one side you can write a protocol, but you also need to think, what is the patient perspective? How are we going to get the data? And how is the data flow, within this whole study? So what we sometimes do is we just look at the whole protocol and identify from the schedule of events which one can be done at home, which one can be done, still needs to be done at the site. So basically we see a lot of hybrid studies. I wouldn't say that we go quickly into only virtual, because that's really very difficult for certain therapeutic areas and indications. And addressing the talent, what is interesting is that, of course, suddenly you need a lot of new people and new talent and new skills to make sure that the study is run in a good way. You need programmers, you need IT support, you need, for example, also call centers, because when you have your patients at home doing assessments through wearables and maybe they have a question, you need to ensure that the patient safety is there. So there's always a 24/7 call center that the patient can reach out to make sure that all the questions or issues are addressed in the right way. Okay? And I think in a recent article from McKinsey, it was actually from this summer, it was shown that about 95% of the patients who participated through telemedicine, they really were very happy. They were very satisfied. It really improved their patient journey. And I think when you look at pharma and CRO business, they actually believe that in the portfolio of next year, almost 90% will have an element of this decentralized clinical trial toolkit. So it's definitely here to stay, and it will grow, but we also need to ensure that the infrastructure is there.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So before opening the questions to the floor, let me just tell you very briefly that this session could not have been possible without the funding from the EU H2020 program, InfraDev. This is a Eatris Plus project that we share with Eatris as well, and we were very happy to be able to do that together. So is there any question in the room for any of the speakers, online or on site? You have like 3 questions, let's say. Nobody wants to break the ice. I mean, we've been here for almost 1 hour and something, 1 hour and a half, and oh yeah, thank you very much. Can you say your name, please, and before the question? And please, can you stand up?
Hola, soc Albert Cuesta, soc periodista, i la primera pregunta és si ets de parlar en català o en anglès.
Depèn de per qui sigui. I guess that, or I can translate that to Angela and Gary if necessary.
Tothom té traducció simultània, si voleu parlar en anglès.
No problem, com vulgueu.
A veure, la pregunta és, estem parlant de assajos clínics descentralitzats tota l'estona com si fossin una qüestió del futur, però Apple va treure el Research Kit fa més de 6 anys i als Estats Units s'està fent servir per part d'institucions sanitàries molt prestigioses de manera habitual. Llavors m'agradaria saber per què, entenc que això no està passant aquí a Europa, m'agradaria saber per què creieu que és així. I si això es redueix exclusivament al tema de GDPR, de reglament de dades.
Do you want to take the...
If you can translate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, he wants to, he wants to ask why we speak about decentralized medicine, clinical trials as a thing of the future when it's already happening, and he wants to know what has to be done with the GDPR to accelerate that, but it's already being on.
Yes.
Is that more or less in a short way the question you asked?
Okay, so thank you very much for the question. It's a very good one. And indeed, the decentralized clinical trials, they have already been in place, maybe for real-world evidence or for some early phase studies. But what we see is that the decentralized clinical trials are now also going to be more and more implemented for the pivotal trials, for the phase 2A, phase 2B, phase 3 studies. And I think there it needs to be a collaboration, like I just explained, from both pharma and from the patient and from the CRO, and then from all the systems. And I'm very pleased to see that there are continuously new apps or wearables that can help facilitate that process. But also there's a lot of investment, both from pharma and CRO, into vendors who facilitate that. And we also see that in the McKinsey article from July, that this is going to be more and more there. So in the beginning it was maybe 30-40%, and then, as I said, more late phase or a little bit early phase, but it's going to be now throughout all the phases of the clinical trials, and also some indications. Although I have to say some indications will be slower than other indications because of some difficult assessments that need to be done, or when the investigational product is very innovative. It's not that we're going to send that immediately to the site. So from a logistical point of view, a lot is possible already from processes and tools, but every trial is new, so you need to assess that on an individual basis to see where we're going, but everybody sees that it's going to be growing, and yeah, it's the time.
Okay, I didn't get your name, but are you happy with the answer, or you want to, you refer to precise example? Yeah, so there was an example you wanted to mention. I didn't get the example, so you want to just to bring it here, and if not, I think we have 1 minute for another question, and that's going to be it. Oh yeah.
Bé, si vols, if you want it, my name is Albert Cuesta. I'm a journalist.
Yes.
And because you asked, and that's not a specific example.
Okay.
The simple thing, the simple question is, why are the clinical trials that have been held in the US for 5-6 years not being done in Europe?
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of change management and also cultural adaptation. Sometimes also communication on what's being done is based on pilots, or for example those real-world evidence, really early trials done with decentralized clinical trials, and it happens in every sector. Like for example, in digital therapies, now we have the DIGA legislation in Germany, so there is prescription and reimbursement for digital therapies in Germany. President Macron was announcing that France is going to do that also, and we can either question ourselves why Spain is not there yet, or we can also try to work as an ecosystem to make that happen. So there is also like an adoption curve of every technology, and I think it depends more on the needs of the different ecosystem and how people put together and join dots than on technologies right now, because technologies are there to be used when they are needed and they are requested. So,
okay. But the good thing is that patients, they are already so used to handle technology, even e-consent. It's actually much better because patient can read it over and over again, maybe have some questions about the informed consent form, and then address it to the physician in another way. But I think the quality is very important.
Okay, we need to finish now, but thank you very much, all the speakers and the people here in the room for your being here and for the questions as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, speakers.
Thank you.